Okay, are we on? Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us for our second Perspectivas. We're so happy to have you guys on. I see that our participant number is climbing up. So we want to just get started by welcome everyone to the amazing series that we've partnered with CasaCuba on. Thank you to our colleagues over at CasaCuba for partnering with us on such an amazing program showcasing our Cuban business leaders at FIU. We're thrilled to welcome the amazing ladies on our panel today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This really was born out of, having virtual programming due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we got together with our colleagues at CasaCuba and said, what could we do to really bring forth and show Cuban influence and how Cuban influence has shaped the business community in South Florida and beyond. And we came up with this amazing idea and this amazing panel, and we have quite an awesome series for you guys, including this one today with Tere and Mayi, which we're so excited to share with you all. FIU Business, being the fourth largest business school in the country and the largest in the state of Florida with 60,000 alums and 9 programs ranked in the top 10, we have many amazing business leaders and many amazing Cuban business leaders, and we wanted to be able to share that story with our community and beyond. So with that, I will be brief and turn it over to my colleague Maria Carla over at FIU Business, CasaCuba, for her intro of our amazing panelists.
Thank you very much, Jenny. My name is Maria Carla Chicuen, and I am the Executive Director of CasaCuba. Thank you all so much for joining us today for Perspectivas, a series which CasaCuba is so proud to present in collaboration with the College of Business at FIU. And before we begin, very briefly, I would like to tell you about CasaCuba, which is a very special initiative of FIU to build a leading cultural center and think tank for the study and discussion of Cuban affairs and the celebration of our Cuban heritage. CasaCuba has attracted influential board members. We have secured a prominent site on our Modesto Mayi campus for our state-of-the-art facility, and we have already received significant philanthropic support, including prestigious grants from the Knight Foundation and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Our venue will feature galleries for interactive exhibits, classrooms to teach FIU's more than 70 courses on Cuba, and a dynamic venue for events, artistic performances, and vibrant programming such as Perspectivas. Perspectivas represents CasaCuba's vision to connect the past, the present, and the future of Cuba and the Cuban community from around the world. This program features prominent Cuban business leaders like Mayi and Tere for intimate conversations on their Cuban roots and family story, their inspiring ascent to their present success, and their take on the future of their industries and our community at large. In these conversations, across the many individual stories of leadership and success, there is always a common element, and it's the Cuban spirit of resilience, innovation, and grit. Perspectivas is just a taste of what you will experience at CasaCuba. Today's conversation will explore the future of the real estate industry with perspectives from our very own leaders in the residential and commercial real estate sectors. They will be introduced by our moderator, Natalia Martínez-Kalinina. Now, Natalia is an organizational psychologist and technologist focused on merging innovation, entrepreneurship, and impact. Most recently, she led the expansion of the Cambridge Innovation Center to Miami. She is also the founder of Awesome Foundation Miami and Aminta Ventures, and holds a BA in psychology from Harvard University and a master's in organizational psychology from Columbia University. I would like to thank Natalia, Tere, and Mayi, 3 extraordinary leaders, for coming together in conversation this morning. And thank you also to our partners at the College of Business and the CasaCuba team for their hard work behind the scenes to present this event. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope to see you at future Perspectivas, and I invite you all to get involved in our historic effort to build our CasaCuba. There are many ways to support and become a founder, and we need your help to make this dream a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Carla, for the really thorough introduction, and thank you everybody for joining us today. This is obviously a topic of much interest for our local community, since real estate in its many shapes and sizes is such a robust part of our local economy. So I'm particularly excited to have our two panelists here today. I know one of them better than the other, but I know a lot about the work of both. So I'm very excited for that. I will to kick us off, because I always find that people do a much better job digging further into their backgrounds than a moderator usually does. I want to give both Tere and Mayi the opportunity to introduce themselves. So just to set the stage, Tere, let's start with you. If you want to tell us about your background, your personal trajectory, and a bit about your company, and then Mayi will move to you.
Perfect. You can see me now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on this conversation today. Very excited to join you. So background, I'm Cuban born. I left Cuba with my parents back in '61, when so many of us left the island, and became a citizen of the United States a few years later, residing in Puerto Rico. I grew up in a little town in Ponce, south of the island, where very few people have stayed, unfortunately. Puerto Rico is going through, certainly a challenging time, and hope that it recovers soon. I came to Miami in a roundabout way. I came to Miami in 1979 and have stayed here since, but for a short stint in San Diego. And I must say that Miami, as we all know, sort of gets under your skin. You get sand in your shoes, as the chamber says. And I genuinely believe this, the authenticity of this city and its people and just the life here is contagious for everyone. And I've just loved it. I've been in the commercial real estate business for more than 30 years now. And really excited that I founded my company 11 years ago, when the recession was, just getting very heated up in 2009. And so I must say that if there's a message that we can convey today about what is happening throughout this crisis, is that there's always opportunity when there's crisis. And I know it's very challenging for a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and for many that are going through challenging times in their businesses, but pause and think about the opportunities, as we know we're resilient and we can navigate through this successfully together. Over the years, we've built a business of 25 top professionals that cover the South Florida region. We are proud to be the largest independently owned commercial real estate firm that is still standing. And we look forward to the opportunities ahead here in Miami and across South Florida. We're thankful for the clients that we have, many institutional owners and foreign investors, local developers that have built and own trophy assets in the office space, which are core business. And we're happy now to also be managing commercial assets throughout the region. So proud of my team and excited still about the opportunities that are ahead of us here in South Florida.
Okay, Mayi, on to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. This is great. I love your mission and I love what you are trying to accomplish with CasaCuba. So it's wonderful to have been invited to the panel. So like Tere, I was born in Cuba and raised in South Florida. I lived the typical immigration story. I arrived in the US with my parents. My parents had absolutely no money. We used to walk to Winn-Dixie to buy our groceries, and we only had enough money to take the bus back because we couldn't afford the bus both ways. All I remember is working really, really hard and seeing my parents work extremely hard to try to build their lives in the United States. I learned a lot along the way from them, a lot of very valuable lessons that have served me well in my business and personal life as well. I graduated from FIU with a degree in business. I worked with my father and helped him build an aerospace company while I went to school at night to earn my degree. I started in real estate in about 1992 after we sold our company, Intercontinental Metals, which was an aerospace aluminum distribution company. I've always been passionate about real estate, architecture, interior design, and all beautiful things in life. And after working with several brokerages as a top producer, I had the opportunity to acquire the Sotheby's brand for South Florida in 2008, like Tere, in the midst of the crisis. So we acquired the rights to South Florida in 2008, and our first month of operations was in 2009. Everyone thought I was extremely crazy, but I too believe that when there's hardship, there's opportunities. And I knew that if I didn't acquire the brand, someone else would, and would really, Miami was pivoting into a very global city. And then I would be left, you know, trying to make all these global connections that I thought were so important for our market, our local market. So together with my son and also an outstanding team, we have built One Sotheby's International Realty that I'm proud to say that today has revenues of about $3 billion, a development division, now a commercial division as well, title company. We represent some of the most prestigious projects in our city. We have now, I started with 30 agents, believe it or not, back in 2009, and we now have 1,000 agents, 18 offices all along Florida's East Coast now, because we serve now all the way from Dade all the way to Indian River County, which is in Vero Beach and Melbourne. So it's been quite a journey, and you know, a lot of fun, a lot of failures along the way where you just have to get up and, you know, start over again. So I'm very proud of all our achievements and proud to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you both. And thank you for giving us a little bit more color into your personal journeys, which I feel like most people can really appreciate, especially thinking back to when both of you started your companies, given the current affairs. So just to kind of set the tone a little bit on the broader discussion that we're having here today, which is about the future of real estate, I'm assuming that most people who are joining us today have joined because they're interested in the topic and hopefully knowledgeable about the sector. But just to get all of us on the same page, I believe most of us have heard or read and definitely seen in the news a lot of headlines about the pandemic and the current just both economic and health climate in 2020 having a really substantive effect on the real estate sector, especially across markets where, you know, where this is a really prominent industry, including Miami, but we've seen a lot of the headlines about New York, et cetera. So I'm wondering if we can start by kind of having you both nuance a little bit more of what that means in terms of what the effect that you so far have observed has been in the past several months, and where you think we are now as we're looking, you know, as cities and the economy start to reopen, but a lot of the complexities of the pandemic still remain.
All right, so I think that, you know, when this first happened, we closed our offices March 16th, and I thought, okay, this is the end. Like, oh my goodness, how are we going to transact? You know, we wanted to be referred to as an essential business so that we could transact in some way. And we wrote letters to Congress and the Senate and really lobbied to try to get us, you know, real estate to be considered as an essential business, which we did. We've been granted that. So believe it or not, in spite of that, those few moments or days of darkness where I thought, where are we headed? We are still transacting throughout this crisis. I think Florida continues to be attractive to the Northeast because of the favorable taxes and lifestyle. April and May were really, really rough months for us. As you know, our listing inventory dwindled down. People were scared to put their homes on the market and let anyone in to show because of the concerns of COVID. And, you know, March was okay because we were still, you know, kind of building on what we had, all the pendings that we had. So March was okay. And we closed mid-March. But we're now seeing a lot of new inventory coming to the market. And we're seeing an increase in pendings as well as closed sales. In some markets, we're, you know, really down only about 12%, where our pendings were really down in April and May up to 70% up in the northern region. So we have had an economic impact to our business, but we've adapted very quickly and really tried to make the best out of the situation. There's, homes are selling. And I think what we found is that people are looking for more space, pools, amenities, like they want to just live in maybe larger areas. And, the Northeast, we've seen so many buyers. We've had properties that were sitting on the market, let's say even in Pinecrest for months and, over a year. And those properties are now having, believe it or not, multiple offers. I think also the luxury segment of the market has outperformed the lower price median homes, both in dollar volume and in units in some markets. So we've really learned to show property with masks and hand sanitizers and booties, and the sellers are adapting to the new reality. So we have been transacting. Our pendings are now looking much higher than they were for June and July, and so we're happy. I am disappointed at the new resurgence of increase in cases, and I'm not really sure how that will impact us down come, the fall, October, November. Some say this was the first wave that we were expecting and that there's a second wave coming. So all of that is a little frightening. But I think that Florida continues to have the weather, the lifestyle, the ocean, the boating. I mean, if you're a boater and you go out there, you see how much activity there is. People are on paddle boards, trying to find activities to do. So I'm an optimist, so I continue to be optimistic about the South Florida real estate market. And not only South Florida, but, all the way up to Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, all the markets that we service.
Thank you.
So Natalia, from a commercial real estate perspective, when the world shut down, 4 billion people went home. And so you can imagine the impact to the commercial real estate industry, from hospitality to retail to office. So it's been brutal for many of the sectors that we see in commercial real estate. I think that as the cities are opening up, we will see businesses completely shut down. And some will never open the doors, and others, will come back. But from a retail standpoint, I will tell you that the mom and pops that didn't have staying power for more than 60, 90 days, will have to reinvent themselves, right? It's been brutal for a lot of the small businesses in our communities. The hotels are also experiencing a resurgence if you are a resort-oriented hotel, but the hotels that are business-oriented will have a really tough time coming back. So I will say that I am very bullish on Florida, very bullish on South Florida and Miami. However, the retail and hotel sectors in our industry certainly have been hit hard and will take time to come back. From an office standpoint, like Mayi, March hit, we went home the first week in March. Thankfully, we were already in the cloud and we were able to do that very efficiently and successfully. Started Zoom calls every day with my team at noon, and had great team building exercises and had great brainstorming sessions, even onboarded new broker that moved here from Orlando, and he knows us, I think, better than if he had been out and about all day, because we've been on Zoom calls every day for all these weeks and months. So technology certainly helped us stay connected and engaged. But I did look at my business plan for the year and I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to be at 50% of plan. This is going to be horrible. And as the year has progressed, because we are so fortunate to be where we are, we're ahead of plan for last year. And so like Mayi is seeing the new arrivals in the residential sector, we're tracking about 220 square feet of new to market activity, of which I think 40% of that, 50% of that, has been since March. So April in particular was a month where we started to see some of these requests for new office space from New York-based companies, Chicago-based companies, even California-based companies. We're fortunate to be in a state that is very business friendly. We don't have a state income tax. Our corporate tax is competitive. We do have the lifestyle and the weather and the global international community, that the diversity that exists here is beautiful. So, you know, we are in a good place to continue to grow, and we're seeing that Florida is the fastest growing state in the country today. The immigration of young professionals and executives and others will continue. I don't see that slowing down. So, you know, as far as our core business, which is the office sector, we are very bullish that we'll finish the year on a good note. We represent lots of new development projects, from the Plaza in Coral Gables to Optima in Aventura. We represent Waterford Business District. That's 1.7 million square feet of office space near the airport. And many projects throughout Brickell and downtown and even Doral and in Plantation in Fort Lauderdale. And we have seen activity of new companies wanting to lease space in these projects consistently for the last 8 weeks. So we're in a good place. We're excited to see Miami continue to be resilient. And we think that the year will be a solid finish for everyone in the office world. Now, I am concerned, as Mayi, about the resurgence of COVID throughout Florida and what impact that will have on this appetite for homes or office space and so on. And so hopefully we can manage through that successfully and be in a good place. I did forget to mention that industrial is on fire. As you know, we have huge barriers to entry in this region. We have the Everglades and the Bay. And so we have a strip of land where you can build and where you can expand industrial parks and warehouses. And, you know, with the Amazons of the world and food distributors and others that are fueling the economy right now, industrial distribution space is in high demand. So that sector actually is thriving. And in South Florida, you know, we've seen it and felt it in a good way.
Excellent, thank you. A couple of kind of follow-up questions. So I think we all share the concern for the second wave or the ongoing wave that is currently happening across Florida in terms of confirmed cases. The projection of that is obviously still unclear. So where we will land in a few months, whether there will be further waves, kind of what the impact of this will be economically speaking are large ambiguities and uncertainties still ahead. I'm wondering, so aside from that, what are your other kind of big questions or markers that you're looking for when you think of, you know, within the next 6 months, so up until close of 2020, what you're looking for, what you're thinking about, what are the big questions that you're tracking and keeping an eye on to help in your respective verticals?
Mayi, you want to go? Or
Yeah, sure. You know, I think, you know, it depends if we're talking about the impact of COVID, which I think is really hard to predict at this point, because I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen or when they're going to have the vaccine. There's so much speculation. So I think we just have to really focus on our core business and what we do every day, and really empowering our teams to do the best they can given the circumstances by doing the team building, doing those Zoom calls. You know, actually, I think we've become a lot more efficient and productive since we started with Zoom. It saved us a lot of travel time, a lot of wasted time in those offices. So, you know, there are a lot of unknowns moving forward in the residential model. Is, you know, how much space are we going to need? You know, I'm tracking how many people are actually coming into the offices and for how long. And as we have to renew the leases, we're going to reevaluate the number of square footage that's needed, because, you know, right now we're taking temperatures as people come in, or, you know, mandatory masks, we're complying with all the, you know, CDC COVID guidelines. But, you know, we found out that one of the assistants in one of the offices had contracted one of our first COVID cases in the organization. And, you know, we had to shut down, we had to do a major cleaning, we had to, you know, quarantine people that were close to her so there's just so many unknowns that I think, like everything, you just have to kind of put your blinders on, not listen to the news too much, because depending on what channel you're listening to, the news is just so, you know, distorted in so many ways, and just really focus on your people, on your core business, the values that got you where you are today, and continue to improve with the technology and everything we have available so that we can, you know, it's an unknown really for everyone. And like Tere said, I think those small businesses make up most of our industry, you know, our economic well-being here in the United States. So I think that it's those that didn't have the staying power, even though they got the PPP, it's just so sad, because I think it's all going to change the way we buy, the way we communicate. And even when we get a vaccine, it's going to take some time, because nobody wants to be the first to get that vaccine and run the risk of getting sick. It's like when you get the flu shot, you know, there's a chance that you're going to get sick. So we're all hoping and praying that there's a vaccine out soon, and that everyone just has the resilience to, you know, this is not only a financial impact, there's a psychological impact to our society for what everyone is undergoing during these uncertain times. A very big, you know, psychological, you know, kids not being, you know, FIU is closed. Like, when are the, you know, how do you reopen? How do you make it safe? Schools, a big whole debate on how to do that. So, you know, it's concerning. And then we've got our business unknowns, like, you know, as far as like, where's our industry headed? What is the future of the real estate brokerage? That's always a concern, you know. There's companies out there that want to transact without agents, and most have failed. But, you know, you take a company like Open Door, which is an example, you know, their model was to use technology to make an offer on your home instantly. They claim to have a simpler, more convenient, you know, alternative to a traditional home sale. And, you know, the underlying idea is they give your home a value. Guess what? It didn't work. And taking that burden off the, you know, owning and marketing and reselling of the home, they still it's proven that they still needed an agent to do that. So there are a lot of unknowns, and we're just doing the best we can as leaders, you know, for our respective companies to probably rally our troops and understand that, as they say, hopefully this too shall pass.
So, I mean, from our perspective, Natalia, there's a lot of questions to answer. Yes, there are a lot of unknowns, and yes, we need to focus on now and focus on our businesses, inspiring our teams, helping our clients navigate through this. You know, making sure that we're very present and very nimble, because you know, being in a state of change always requires us to be flexible and to adapt. I think that from the office, in the office world, the rumors that the office is disappearing are, you know, way over exaggerated. I will tell you that the surveys that have been conducted by major firms like global firms like Perkins & Will and Gensler, Interiors Architect, Callus and RTKL, they all are showing that major companies around the world that have large global office portfolios are finding that only 10% of the employees are saying we want to work remotely always. 90% want either to be in the office or have some flexibility to be able to work remotely at times, but be in the office most of the time. I think we have to remember that, you know, human beings are social animals, right? I mean, this is what happened when they opened up Miami so quickly. You know, what happened? Everybody just flooded the beaches and flooded the restaurants and flooded the streets, because people are hungry for interaction that goes beyond the virtual interaction that we can have with this, you know, great tool, Zoom. But I think, you know, there's innovation, there is collaboration, there is culture that is maintained and comes alive when we are together in an office environment. So the questions around that have to do with, all right, how does the office adapt to the post-COVID pandemic? Is furniture changed? Do we have the 6-foot separation going forward? And are we going to adjust when COVID vaccines are found? Do we need more space because we need to be more spread out? Or do we keep the same amount of space, create the spacing that is required between people, but then rotate employees that are doing certain functions that can be done remotely and they don't need to be in the office full time, and the office becomes, you know, a place that you go 3 times a week or twice a week? Do we have dedicated shared desks or not? Does the office just become a place to have meetings and gather once in a while? So there's a lot of discussion going on around this, around how to use the space efficiently and how to adapt the space. But for certain, it's not going away. I think that that's been tried by Hewlett-Packard, by Yahoo, by IBM, by so many, even technology companies, right, that are the first ones to say today that they don't need an office. And they've always come back to the office eventually. So we're in a state of change. We're in a state that I believe offers opportunity to, for corporate America to really think about their policies also with respect to employees. You know, not only about, you know, remote work and the use of office space, but their policies in terms of, you know, hiring and culture. So, I mean, there's a lot going on right now beyond just, you know, the COVID crisis that I think will impact corporations for a long time. And so I think it's an exciting time. It's painful to watch some of the crisis side effects today, but I think as Maggie said, I am an optimist, and I'm hoping that we're going to come out of this being better all around in terms of, you know, how office works, how companies behave, and how employees interact.
I think you both thank you both. And I think both of you addressed in different ways kind of trends that were already in motion, but that perhaps are now a little bit accelerated. So the expectation of a higher degree of technological sophistication, or the revisiting around how offices work and how the employee virtual, not virtual, kind of how you build collaborative teams across hybrid settings. So I think several of these pieces were already in motion, unrelated to the COVID-19 reality. Are there, when you look ahead, are there trends that you have noticed that we haven't discussed that you think have accelerated as a result of the last handful of months, or you expect to accelerate? And are there any trends that have surprised you or that have halted for some reason?
I will say there's one thing that surprised me, and that is my youngest teammates have been the ones that have been most eager to get back to the office. And when you chat with them about why, it's all about, you know, the human experience and the opportunity to be, you know, next to the rest of the team, so that they can learn, so they can be mentored, so that they can have, you know, more conversations, more casual conversations about what is happening. And also because the spaces that they live in perhaps are not necessarily completely ideal for remote work. So so that kind of surprised me a little bit, but excited to see their enthusiasm about getting back to the office. I would say that, you know, other than that, the quick demand that unleashed 8 weeks ago for office product in Miami from companies in New York and Chicago and LA especially, has surprised me a bit, that so many people were just ready to make that change so quickly while we're still navigating this crisis. And I think a lot of people just gave a lot of thought about how do I want to live my life? How do I want to work? And you know, where do I want to be? And if I can pick up my family, and you have kids, and you know, you can be mobile, let's just go move to the place where we want to spend, you know, the next 10 years or the foreseeable future. So Miami has been at the at the end of that joy, and so it's been really gratifying to watch our city be a place of choice.
What's really surprised me is the adaptability of my team, both from the employee perspective, those that work as employees in the company, and the 1,000 independent agents. They figured it out really quick. They adapted. They made the necessary changes. And, you know, imagine trying to go show a home during all of the restrictions that were imposed. It was, so seeing that adaptability for me was absolutely just mind-blowing, how well they adapted. And then what really inspired me was the resilience that I saw. And that resilience is what keeps you going. It's what keeps you motivated. It's what keeps you seeing, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's been extremely inspiring for me. Everyone has shown tremendous resilience, both our employees. I think they're working harder than ever. They're more united, more focused, putting out more work, probably working longer hours than they ever did. And the agents too, they've just found a way to, you know, and think about our business. You only get paid if you're an agent, if you transact, if you're able to successfully take a deal to the closing table. So all of these people have families. They have, some of them are the breadwinners. And so, you know, there was a lot of fear out there, and their resilience has just inspired me. And I kept telling them all along, we must live in faith. We know that we're going to get through this. So just have faith that this is, you know, gonna, and then all of a sudden we started doing, imagine, virtual open houses, because we were not allowed to do open houses as they are known. Well, guess what? I don't want to stop doing virtual open houses, because some of these properties really received over 6,000 views on different social media platforms. So it kind of taught us that there is a new way, and that now people are looking. So this was extremely, extremely valuable and important for our business. And I think little wins like that have inspired, you know, our agents to see there is a way. We're going to do this. We're going to get through this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think there's been a very heavy conversation about resilience. I'm an organizational psychologist by training, and obviously as a person running a company and running a team, the topic of personal resilience as well as company resilience is something that has come up more often over the past 2 months than I think it has over the past 5 years. So the toolbox that people have and that companies build, I think is pretty on the table and much more topical for everyone in their own lives. So I think you hit that nail on the head. I had read kind of a last question before I start to look at some of the audience questions, which thank you so much for the folks who have already submitted them. This is not related to COVID, but I had read some months ago, this was before the COVID-19 life kind of became our main topic of conversation, of a couple of just predictions looking ahead, kind of at the real estate industry more broadly. And I think it was a PwC report, and there was an expectation or a claim made that it would be expected to, the industry in general is expected to have to deal much more closely with governments moving forward. And some of that I think was related to globalization and different trends related to just larger macroeconomic and macro political realities. And some of it was dealing with the challenges we all know, climate change, resilience, the changing faces of cities. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on kind of how you imagine the industry will adapt to either engaging more with the government and some of these larger themes like resilience and climate change.
I do. I think that we will see more of that, definitely. And I think that will expand substantially, and it will lead to new opportunities. And especially in the development arena, I think that could definitely happen. You know, I think that climate change, especially here in Florida, is going to be a big deal and is going to impact real estate. I mean, if you think about it, I think that by 2040, they're predicting that there's going to be, you know, rising waters of 8 to 12 inches by the year of 2040, which will impact a lot of the coastal cities. And that's something we have to deal with. I think for a long time, we just kind of said, we don't want to look, we don't want to go there, but it's here, it's there. They have to definitely have to, you know, deal with that. you know, it's just happening. It's here. It's not going to go away. And I think we're already seeing, I mean, I have a family member who is thinking of selling their house and moving elsewhere because of the concerns, you know, being ahead of the game and, you know, selling their home prior to that. So, and then on the other hand, you have people that are living in these beautiful waterfront homes and they keep trading for more money. And they're like, okay, we're going to live today and enjoy today. And I'm not going to worry, you know, what's going to happen 20 years from now. I'm going to enjoy my time now because I don't know how much of that I have left with health and prosperity. So it just depends, you know, who you ask. But it is a real, definitely, it's, you know, coastal. The cities are going to definitely be impacted, and we're going to have more storms, and they're going to be worse each year. And so it's a reality that we have to face here in Florida. Definitely. Absolutely.
So Natalia, one area that you touched on is of, you know, will certainly impact office buildings across the US and I'm sure globally as well. And, you know, as a result of COVID, landlords are all evaluating, you know, mechanical systems and the surfaces throughout, and, you know, operationally how the buildings work and so on. And so, you know, there's a concern that the Class B, we classify buildings in A, B, or C. So Class B product that was built maybe, you know, 50 years ago, 45 years, may not be able to be adapted as easily or as effectively in terms of investment, capital investment, because the rents won't support the kind of capital that is required to bring those buildings up to new standards. And so there's a whole conversation about how do you reposition those buildings? What is the future of those office buildings that have not been renovated recently with new mechanical systems, elevator systems, and you know, quality of air, and so on. I think you'll see a new generation of buildings designed with adopting new standards, including, for instance, in Florida, you know, we might see operable windows. We haven't seen that in office space in a long time. And so there's a conversation about how do you get better, you know, fresh air intake into your space, and how do you provide for that safe environment that everyone is yearning for. I think, you know, in terms of the issues related to Florida and sea level rise, you know, one of the biggest concerns I have has to do with affordable housing, right? You know, this community is a community that enjoys a very wealthy population, but we also are one of the poorest regions in the country. So it's a place of have and have-nots. And so, yes, there are a lot of very expensive homes and condominiums or along the bay that trade for millions and millions of dollars. And that's wonderful for our community. The owners of these properties also invest in our economy, and they spend dollars here and pay real estate taxes, and all of that is very healthy for the economy. But the insurance companies are increasing insurance rates at a very rapid rate. The reinsurance companies triggered an increase of over 30% that cost the insurance companies to pass that on to the consumer. And so I can tell you that it can become, you know, pretty unaffordable to own a home if you have to finance any portion of that purchase, when you have to pay the insurance the thousands of dollars that they're requiring for windstorm policies. And so that's a concern. How does government then intercede and with leadership provide opportunities for this community to maintain workforce housing and affordable housing for those that just don't have the means to access, you know, that kind of income. So that's a concern I have, and one that I hope our government and you know, private sector can work together on for solutions to address successfully.
Right. I think as we deal with a future in which there are parts of not just Miami-Dade, but in general the coastal cities that will become uninsurable significantly before they become uninhabitable, there's an interesting intersection there around what and how we respond to that, which I imagine there'll be differences across the cities and along the coast. Okay, let me take a look at some of the questions that we have from our audience. Okay, so this is a question I think we hear often. Will Miami be and or remain viable considering the rising cost of living?
I think it will. I think we're still very affordable in comparison to major cities around the country, such as San Francisco, New York, LA. And we're very affordable in comparison to other major global cities around the world, like London and Paris and so on. So I think Miami companies need to evaluate also, you know, our compensation standards. I will tell you that that's an issue that I have seen addressed when you're recruiting talent from New York. Well, if you want to recruit someone from New York, you have no choice but to pay up, right? And you know, your compensation package will mirror that of New York. When you compare that to the same position that's been here in Miami for some time, we're probably trailing at 20% behind in total comp, right? So I think that, you know, in order for Miami to continue to grow as a global city and continue to attract professionals across various industries, we have to take a close look at how we compensate our talent and be able to also bring back the talent that has left our city. Natalia, you know, my two daughters, you know, went to school away from Miami and chose to stay away from Miami in Washington, D.C. and New York. And so, you know, it's interesting to me that a city such as this one, you know, has lost a lot of talent and hasn't been able to bring it back yet because we've not been able to offer the kinds of opportunities yet that exist in cities like New York. So I think I'm excited about all these new companies coming here because that opens up the door for more talent to continue to move here. And I think we'll continue to see that over the next decade, given that Miami has become a place that a lot of young professionals want to call their home. So.
Okay, so let's see. I'm going to cluster a couple of these questions and you two see which ones and how you want to answer them. So the first one is, a lot of this is around pricing, I would say. So there's a question around kind of what has been the impact of the interest rates being decreased on kind of real estate demand. The other one is looking at where we expect just general kind of the market pricing moments to be over the next 6, 7, 8 months as incentives like the CARES Act obviously put people, or the sunset of the CARES Act put people in different economic positions. Just kind of where we think the pricing, or if you think kind of what pricing changes you would expect in the market as a couple of these elements start to potentially sunset.
We've seen the market pricing hold up pretty well, I think, in the last 4 months. We expected that there was going to be sort of a maybe 20%, 30% price drop, but it hasn't turned out that way because the demand has been there. I think the biggest disparity, though, is really trying to find a happy medium between the very luxury high-end properties and finding some affordable housing. Clearly, Miami's a really expensive city to live in, and there's a lot of, believe it or not, you know, poverty here. You know, over 40% of our population, or 30%, is not making what they should be making. So I think that finding that affordable housing and having some responsibility for developers, or talk about government, private, public incentives to find, you know, and create communities outside of where the land has become so expensive that you can't really build affordable housing. So further going west or further going inland to try to find and develop new communities and create that, I think is going to be critical. We have seen that, you know, prices have remained pretty stable in spite of the COVID. We do, you know, if you look at the $300,000 price point, I think that's a little different, and that's been affected quite a bit more because those people are really dependent on their jobs and not, it's not the luxury buyer that's coming from Greenwich, Connecticut to buy, you know, a $3 or $4 million home. So those people are now unemployed, and it's been, you know, it's been a disaster for them. So we do need to find a way to bridge that gap that we have in real estate right now. And the interest rates have certainly helped. I mean, they're at the lowest point ever, and I think that's been extremely helpful for giving that confidence to buyers and making it more affordable for people to be able to purchase homes that otherwise they would not be able to purchase. And a lot of the banks have eased up. You know, before they were requiring 30–40%. Now you're seeing some loans, you know, done at, you know, with 10% financing, you know, 10% down. So I think it's all been good. The low interest rates have really been good for the real estate market here in South Florida.
Yeah, for the commercial sector, the dynamic is a little different in terms of investment as opposed to leasing, right? On the leasing side, we're seeing in office continuous demand. Pricing is holding up, rents are holding up. We haven't seen a lot of movement and concessions other than to create tenant mobility and attract tenants to new development projects. You know, we've certainly seen an uptick in the cash allowances that landlords are providing to cover the build-out costs of the interiors of the office. Construction for interiors build out, the cost of construction of interiors build out hasn't settled yet or hasn't been reduced yet. Labor is still expensive, materials are still expensive, and so, you know, we used to be able to build out, to put it in perspective, a space in shell condition with a $50 a square foot allowance just 6 years ago, 7 years ago. You know, you get an office finished out. Today, you're looking at the same size office, let's say 5,000 square feet, and you need to invest $90 to $100 a square foot. So there's been a huge increase in build out costs that, you know, certainly creates a challenge if, you know, particularly in this environment when companies are all about preserving cash. From an investment standpoint, there were four major office towers in the market pre-COVID in downtown and Brickell that were actively being marketed for sale, and with a short list of buyers likely already lined up for at least for one or two of those deals. And 3 out of the 4 deals were immediately pulled back. So they were taken off the market. The sellers decided to pause. And my understanding is that 2 of them were maybe 2 or 3 out of 4 may start to push forward now and may be back in the market soon, if not already. Financing for product of, let's say, retail and hotels, very challenging. There's just, the market shut down. For office, we're working on a deal where the buyer said they had a pricing that was about 225 basis points above LIBOR, and it went to 450 over, and they were able to access 70% financing before, and today they're at 60%. So pricing and conditions for from lenders have changed dramatically, and we probably don't see that changing through the end of the year. So again, you know, you need tremendous liquidity, a lot of equity to acquire commercial real estate assets today. Industrial doesn't have the same challenges as other food groups in our industry, but certainly the rest of of the food groups are a bit more challenged when it comes to accessing financing, even in a low cost interest rate environment. I mean, most lenders are not, most traditional lenders, banks are not very actively lending. The insurance companies and others that play in the market are active, but certainly the terms have changed.
Thank you. Let me ask one kind of final question in the last couple minutes we have. Mayi, there's a couple of questions that are a little bit, that are specifically for you because they're from a residential standpoint. So are we expecting foreclosure rates to rise is one. The other one is, how do you see the condo market going forward? And the third is, do you think we're moving towards a housing bubble post-COVID-19?
I do think that they're talking about an increase in foreclosures in properties, probably, under $700,000. So I do see that as a possibility. I think that we're not going to be going into a bubble because I think, on the contrary, I think that prices will readjust depending on demand. It's all demand based. So as there's less demand for these products, people are out of work. I think that, I think we had the bubble. I think we've been suffering from the bubble for the last probably 2 or 3 years with the increase in the condo market of available inventory out there. It seemed like everybody put out their products at first. So that kind of readjusted pricing for a little bit. So, but I'm still bullish on the real estate market for South Florida. I think we're going to continue to do well. We're going to find the way to continue to be strong. And regardless of what price point you're in, whether you're buying your first $200,000 or $300,000 home, or whether you're buying something at the high end of the market, $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 million, we're going to continue to see influx from, what's beautiful about South Florida is that we are a global economy here locally, and the diversity allows us then to have people interested in coming to South Florida for so many reasons that we all know: the culture, the lifestyle, all the things, the arts, the great restaurants they've opened. So everyone wants a little piece of South Florida, and it's not just anymore because of the weather and beautiful sunshine that we have. So I'm really optimistic about our future in real estate here in South Florida. I really am. And I think we have to communicate that out there, because we've seen the resilience during these times and how people have, continue to want to come. And I think what they experienced in the commercial is the same thing. The same buyers we're seeing. They're coming from New York. They're coming from LA. They're coming from even Seattle. Seattle was never a market that was interested in coming to South Florida. Washington, D.C., Boston. We're seeing them from everywhere. And there must be a reason there besides taxes, and savings and taxes. I think it's the quality of life. I think people today are making choices about how they want to live their lives, where they want to live their lives. And I think that's really, really important. And, we really did well with COVID initially. I think, Florida did really, really well. It's just now but we're going to get through this. I'm positive that we will.
Well, thank you both. I think it's fair to say that I think, at least for me, our conversation has reinforced what I already kind of somewhat think about South Florida, is we're a region with so many opportunities. And yes, we have some gaps, some very substantive gaps and some very substantive risks, as any community does. And it's up to us to figure out how to maximize those risks in a way that also addresses our access and inequity gaps and our other challenges ahead. But we do seem to be better positioned for this, ironically, or not, maybe not ironically, but interestingly enough, we're well positioned to take some of these things on as a result of this year, with some differences across the board. But thank you both for sharing your thoughts and your experiences and your
Natalia, and thank you, CasaCuba, for having us on FIU. Really.
Yes, this is great. This was wonderful. And I just want to say that I just think that, we need to continue to be adaptable to whatever comes our way. We need endurance, and we need purpose, and we need resilience, and we need integrity, and we need all those great things that are going to get us through these tough times. So there's always opportunity and there's always hope. So as long as we keep that in mind, we're all going to be okay.
Totally agree with you, Mayi.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you again to FIU for this partnership and for hosting this really great discussion. And thank you both for participating. And to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Tere. Thank you.
Stay well. Bye-bye.
Stay well.